Incredible transformation. Deliveryman's blood drop saves CEO from heart attack. Love discovered. Rick had always considered himself ordinary. At 32, he knew the ins and outs of every street in Georgetown, the bustling suburb where he braved traffic in his rusty delivery van. He spent his days wrestling with heavy packages, simply trying to make ends meet for his father, whose health was slipping day by day. Friends stationed in corporate towers were climbing ladders, but Rick's world was confined to deliveries and hospital visits. Still, deep down, he dreamed of a life that stretched beyond the drudgery, a life filled with purpose, perhaps far removed from delivering boxes. On that bright Tuesday afternoon, the sun painted the streets gold as Rick navigated through the throngs of pedestrians. He pulled to the side, his fingers drumming nervously against the steering wheel. Just then, a commotion broke out ahead. A crowd gathered, then parted like the Red Sea. Lucy, the high-powered CEO of a multinational corporation, collapsed onto the concrete, paler than the passing clouds. Panic erupted. Rick's heart raced. He couldn't help but wonder if yet another life was folding under fate's cruel hand. Throwing caution aside, he sprinted toward her. Each step felt like a collision of fear and urgency. His breath hitched in his throat as he knelt beside her. The chaos around him blurred. Would help arrive in time? His mind clouded with frantic thoughts. Rick instinctively took action, drawing a blade from his burning anxiety. Desperation clawed at him. Blood could save her, he thought. With no time to reason, he offered a drop of his own blood, a raw sacrifice to stabilize her until help rushed in. As the news of his grotesque heroism spread like wildfire, Rick found himself thrust into an unfamiliar spotlight. Media buzzed about the Deliveryman who had saved the life of a CEO. Yet as cameras flashed and people saluted him as the reluctant hero, the joy felt muted. A real-life superhero? He was just a man in a worn-out uniform, battling the daily grind. His heart belonged to his father, and the thought of chasing after a fleeting spotlight felt like betrayal. When Lucy recovers, I need to talk to you. She reached out, her voice still weak, but laced with something more profound, a quiet determination. She saw potential in him, potential he felt was dimmed by the dirt under his nails and the weight of his family's struggle. Medicine had been a distant dream, one that withered the moment he took on the role of caretaker. Was it possible? Could he step away from the life he knew to grasp at a fantasy reserved for a higher echelon? Anxiety bubbled under the surface. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. And yet, every time Rick wrestled with that idea, an unshakable doubt clawed at him. Who would allow a Deliveryman, smeared with grease and responsibility, into the sterile halls of medicine? The disparity echoed in his ears, a nagging whisper that he was merely a class caricature, forever destined for the driver's seat rather than the doctor's office. The longer he thought about it, the more tumultuous his emotions became. Could the worlds they belonged to actually intersect? Or was bravery merely a mirage masking the stark differences that loomed between them? As the dust began to settle from the shocking act of heroism, whispers stormed through corporate walls and streets alike, unraveling their tenuous bond. A corporate scandal emerged, throwing Lucy into turmoil and forcing Rick to contemplate not just his own uncertainties, but the authenticity of their burgeoning connection. Would what was built on blood and desperation stand the test of societal scorn once again? The doubts began to capsize in his mind, overwhelming him. Just as Rick thought he might grasp a flicker of a new life, a betrayal loomed close enough to touch, forcing him to confront a choice: retreat back into the comfort of shadows or wrestle with the chaos and rise beside Lucy. Would love find its way through the labyrinth of class, trust, and ambition, or would it vanish before his very eyes? As the weight of his decision loomed larger, Rick felt the ground shift beneath him, shifting into an unseen storm that left him with a singular question. Was he brave enough to fight for his place in Lucy's world, or was the cost too great? Rick stood frozen at the crossroads of his life, anxiety gnawing at him like a relentless tide. In the ever-shifting landscape, where he once felt invisible, he now found himself noticed, yet painfully aware of the disquieting truths that accompanied the attention. Lucy was not merely a fleeting figure of admiration. She represented an entire universe of possibilities he had scarcely dared to envision. But her world felt alien, ruled by unwritten rules and steeped in expectations that danced just out of reach. The morning sun streamed through the van's cracked windows, illuminating dust particles that glinted like tiny stars in a faraway galaxy. Sitting there, surrounded by reminders of his past life, coffee-stained receipts, the comforting scent of worn-out leather, Rick grappled with what lay ahead. Even now, her weak voice echoed in his mind, urging him to consider a future beyond logistics and routine. Could he even contemplate stepping into her realm? He reached for his phone, glancing at the barrage of notifications swarming in, punctuated by social media posts and headlines framing him as the unlikely hero. Deliveryman saves CEO, read the headlines, but he felt more like a tourist navigating a foreign land. The flux of admiration contrasted sharply with the permanence of his responsibilities back home. Every like, every comment trapped him in a cycle of reflection. A sudden call cut through the noise. It was Lucy. "Rick, can you meet me?" Her voice carried urgency, but also warmth, an antidote to his doubts. "We need to talk face to face." The anxiety that gripped him morphed into a determination he didn't know he possessed. After a brief internal debate, he agreed, a decision that felt like crossing a threshold into uncertainty. The cafe they chose for their meeting was an oasis of calm amid the chaos surrounding them. As Rick entered, the barista offered a reassuring smile, but the atmosphere felt thick with expectations. He spotted Lucy at a corner table, her brows knotted in thought as she sipped herbal tea. With her tailored blazer and polished demeanor, she seemed a figure carved from a different world. "Thank you for coming," she said, her eyes flickering with determination and something more, perhaps vulnerability. He took a moment to orient himself, acutely aware of the ambiguous power dynamic at play. She was a CEO, and he was a deliverman. But today, they shared a bond forged in urgency and potential. "I wanted to clarify something," Lucy began, her voice reflective. "What you did for me, it was extraordinary. But we need to discuss what it means moving forward." The weight of her statement registered in the air between them. "We can take this further. I think you should consider pursuing medicine. You have a knack for responding under pressure." Rick's heart raced. The suggestion felt like a lifeline thrown into turbulent waters, but also a heavy chain linked to his past. "You don't understand. I'm just a deliverman. I've no education or experience in that field. I'm not like you." Each word fought against the flicker of hope rising within him. "I see potential, Rick. You acted with more courage than I ever could have imagined. Have you ever considered what else you might be capable of?" Her unwavering gaze invited him to explore the limits of his ambition, yet the self-doubt inside him rattled chains louder than any call to adventure. "You're looking at me through a lens I don't fit. I have responsibilities," he said, shoulders slumped, gaze shifting. "My father, he needs me." Lucy's expression softened, the tension easing just a notch. "And you can still be that person and grow. It doesn't have to be one or the other." There was profound understanding in her words, a clarity that both reassured and terrified him. The weight of her assessment lingered. Could he dare to dream again? Could he veer toward a future that felt rich with possibility? The specter of his father's health, however, loomed ominously in his periphery, tethering him to his current life. "Lucy, it's a profound challenge for someone like me," he trailed off, grappling with courage and uncertainty. What if he failed? What if he reached for greatness and fell short? "Don't shy away from your potential because of where you've come from," she urged. "Greatness doesn't recognize social conventions until you seize it for yourself." As her words settled in the recesses of his mind, Rick felt the dawn of self-belief flicker within him. Maybe she was right, and navigating this uncharted territory could yield more than delivering packages. Suddenly, a loud crash in the cafe startled them, and Rick's instincts kicked in again, dousing his thoughts. He turned toward the noise, heart thudding. Life pulled him back into an unpredictable reality. Was he about to find out just how capable he truly was? The storm outside mirrored his internal whirlwind, and he couldn't ignore the immediate rush. Rick's world was shifting yet again. What would happen next would determine not just his fate, but the very fabric of the life he cautiously began to envision. Was continued uncertainty worth the risk of discovery? Before he could answer, a commotion erupted, urging him to make a choice: face it all or retreat again into the familiar. He looked at Lucy, wondering if she would still see him as the hero she believed him to be, or if he might find courage in an unexpected moment of chaos. The cacophony of panicked voices and shattering ceramic jolted Rick back to the present moment. Instinctively, he shifted his gaze from Lucy to the source of the commotion, a young man sprawled on the ground, his eyes wide and breathless. Anxiety surged through Rick's veins, more urgent than before. Was this a chance to step into the hero role that Lucy imagined for him? In that instant, time appeared to warp. The anxiety that threatened to replace action refocused his thoughts. He was not merely a deliverman caught in a spiral of self-doubt. He was a witness, someone capable of making a difference in a moment where so many stood paralyzed by their fears. "Stay here," he said to Lucy, pushing himself up from the table. Voice low yet firm, he approached the fallen man. Was this his opportunity to act on the courage Lucy believed he possessed? The anxiety that cascaded within him surfaced as a fierce determination. With each step, the desires of his heart and mind realigned, converging toward a singular resolution: seize the moment or remain stagnant. When he reached the young man, Rick knelt beside him. "Hey, can you hear me?" He scanned the scene, assessing potential causes: panic attack, fainting, or more severe. The young man's breath rasped, anxiety radiating from him like waves in a tempest. Every detail in Rick's mind sharpened as he pulled pieces of knowledge from his past experiences, moments of his life that had felt mundane yet now armed him with instinct. "Breathe with me," Rick said, focusing on grounding not only the young man in front of him but also himself amid the chaos. He demonstrated a rhythmic inhalation and exhalation. Inhale 1, 2, 3, exhale gradually. The frantic breaths began to slow. As the tension of the crowded cafe turned into a tableau of shared breaths, Rick felt Lucy's presence beside him, her eyes observing, perhaps judging. With every passing second, more patrons gathered, their faces flushed with anxiety. The whole situation felt surreal. Rick was suddenly in command of an equation he had never considered. He may not hold a medical license, but if there was one thing he understood from years of navigating logistics, it was the importance of staying cool-headed. "Can you tell me your name?" he prompted softly. "Jason," the young man replied, barely above a whisper. Rick felt an unexpected bond. Here was a fellow human, vulnerable and scared, just as he was felt in this moment of elevated chaos. "Yes, Jason. You're going to be okay. Let us get you back on your feet," Rick assured him. "What do you feel? Any pain? Trouble breathing?" The young man shook his head slightly, eyes fluttering with disbelief at this stranger's calm. Encouragement surged within Rick, emboldening him to step further into a role of leadership in this dire scenario. In observing his own composure, a realization dawned: he had both the capacity and the will to help. Just outside the realm of delivery, there was a world that required human connection, compassion, and ultimately courage. As Rick navigated the incident, Lucy knelt beside him, providing support without question. Their eyes met for a moment, and he read in her gaze the approval of someone who recognized strength when it appeared. Her silent confidence in him reignited his flickering self-belief, urging him on. With Jason now breathing better, Rick felt the heavy burden of doubt dim, replaced by the promising glow of potential. "You did great. Just take it easy," he said, exhaling a deep breath himself, feeling the release of the tension flickering around him and within. As the cafe employees began to take control, including calling for medical assistance, Rick stood back, absorbing the shock of what had just unfolded. He glanced at Lucy, and her beaming acknowledgement flashed like an electric current between them. Rick realized he was no longer merely the man behind the wheel of a van. He was becoming someone who could help and heal just as Lucy had encouraged. There was a faint call within him that hungered to pursue this feeling of triumph over self-doubt, to grow from the shadows of his past. But then, as the initial swirl of chaos ebbed, he felt an unsettling pang deep in his chest. What would that mean for his father back home? Leaning away from the wave of adrenaline, dark thoughts clouded his mind. While the world around him seemed to shift toward a brighter horizon, the pull of his responsibilities whispered to him a tether that held him firmly anchored to the weight of duty. Rick's heart sank. On the cusp of discovering something new, he still faced the hard choice of commitment versus aspiration. In the stillness that followed, every heartbeat echoed with possibilities and pitfalls. He'd stepped forward today, but would he have the resolve to continue on this path? The moment of truth loomed, just out of reach, threatening to immerse him in uncertainty again. Was he ready to confront the challenge ahead, or would he let fear dictate his journey once more? The cafe's atmosphere began to settle, yet a tempest raged within Rick. He had felt a flicker of purpose and control, but now the weight of reality pressed down like a thick fog. As medical personnel arrived and seamlessly took over, the sense of accomplishment he experienced earlier began to fray at the edges. He looked over at Jason, now leaning against the wall with a relieved expression, grateful and bewildered all at once. "Rick," Lucy approached him, her voice steady but laced with an urgency that tugged at him.
"What just happened in there?"
Rick hesitated, grappling with the implications of his actions. I don't know. I saw someone who needed help and did something." His voice was tentative, as if the admission might undermine a burgeoning sense of strength. "It was more than that," she pressed, her eyes alive with curiosity and admiration. "You didn't just help him. You took command of the situation. That's incredible." His gut twisted. He wanted to believe her, to embrace this new version of himself she was presenting, but the specter of doubt clawed at him, whispering that the moment had been sheer luck rather than skill. "But does it change anything? What am I really supposed to do with this?" He searched for validation but instead found confusion multiplying, his mind racing back to his father's stern face. "You have a job to do, Rick. Be responsible." Lucy opened her mouth as if to argue but thought better of it, her face softening. "What if it does change things? What if this is the beginning of something? You can't deny what you just did. You were capable and present." Rick turned his gaze back to the street, the flurry of evening life moving in stark contrast to the turmoil in his heart. The colors were vibrant, bustling, yet he felt ghost-like, detached. "I've been a deliverman. Just a guy on the road. Now, what does this mean? Maybe it means exploring where your instincts take you." She reached out, a gentle touch to his arm grounding him momentarily. "You've questioned yourself for so long. Maybe it's time for you to confront your fears and see what you truly want." The idea sent a jolt of uncertainty through him. Confronting his fears felt monumental, a mountain too daunting to scale. What if I fail? What if I'm just not cut out for anything more than this? That's the point of trying. The fear of failure can't hold you back any longer. Her voice grew firmer. Every person has something more inside them. You just need to reach for it. You've just begun to scratch the surface. She turned away to distance herself from Rick's conflicted emotions, but the simple act sparked a realization. His life, each mundane delivery, and the burdens of expectation had obscured what he might become if only he dared to step beyond the confines of his past. An internal battle ensued. Every past disappointment raged against the emerging notion of potential. What if he left behind routine in favor of that unpredictability where acts of courage and kindness resided? But was he really willing to make that leap? Would he have the strength to face the conversations with his father or the admirers of stability? As he replayed Jason's panicked breaths, He felt the echo of voices in the cafe, the call for human connection drawing him toward a new path. "I'm going to try," he replied, the words tasting both foreign and exhilarating as they left his lips. Lucy turned back, a spark of determination igniting in her eyes. "Then let us figure it out together. It's time to explore what that really means for you." In that moment, Rick's heart raced not from fear but from the promise of discovery ahead. Would he dare to commit to that uncertain future, to face his responsibilities at home, and instead choose to chase the unexpected? Yet just as a hint of a new purpose began to settle over him, a shadow of doubt loomed larger. Was he ready to face the consequences of his decisions? What awaited him as he opened this new chapter? As he stood on the precipice of change, the questions remained: would he leap or linger on the edge? The next day dawned, and Rick's mind was a cacophony of thoughts and emotions. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, the remnants of last night's revelations swirling in his consciousness. "I'm going to try." The words echoed like an incantation, a commitment he felt nearly unworthy of. He reluctantly rolled out of bed, the cool air pricking his skin. The day stretched before him like an unmarked road. Was it too early to make changes? He imagined stepping into his delivery truck, the familiar scent of grease and cardboard washing over him, a temporary comfort that would soon smother the courage he had just found. Each morning previously had felt like a robotic repetition, but now it felt like the dawn of something uncharted. As he prepared for work, the internal narratives expanded, convincing him that every encounter today would be a test. The previous day's chaos at the cafe replayed in his mind, a maze of possibilities and fears. Was he merely an accidental hero, or could he forge a path as the man who could help in more significant ways? The stakes felt high, yet he sensed a spark pushing him forward. Arriving at the delivery hub, Rick was met with his boss, Greg, whose gruff demeanor rarely wavered. "You're late, Rick," he barked, his impatience palpable as he juggled a clipboard. "We've got routes to cover." "I'm on it," Rick replied, suppressing his usual instinct to defer under pressure. As he arranged packages, he seized the opportunity to speak up. "Greg, do you ever feel like our jobs could be more?" The question surprised himself as it fell from his lips. "What do you mean?" Greg paused, brow furrowing. "It just feels routine, you know? Like there's more to what we do than just delivering packages." Rick's voice was tentative, but he pressed on. "Sometimes it feels like we're just cogs in a machine." "Does anyone ever think bigger?" Greg eyed him skeptically. "Life isn't about thinking bigger. It's about doing your job. Stick to the basics, Rick." The weight of his boss's dismissive tone clamped down on him, but rather than retreating, Rick considered his next words carefully. "But what if we tried something different for once? What if our deliveries could be a way to connect with people? Make a difference?" An awkward silence encased them, and Rick felt the faint pulse of fear return. Perhaps he had overstepped. Greg resumed checking the clipboard, grumbling under his breath, leaving Rick feeling introspective and yet fueled. As the day progressed, each delivery presented a canvas for experimenting with newfound perspectives. Rick made a point to engage with every recipient, asking about their day, listening attentively, even offering a smile when the circumstances felt heavy. He took delight in small, shared moments that had previously escaped his attention, the laughter of children when he delivered a package to their excited hands, or the extra moments spent talking with an elderly woman who had been lonely. With every connection he sparked, his own faith wavered less, and he felt echoes of his strength surfacing. At the end of the day, he returned home exhausted but fulfilled in a way he hadn't anticipated. The conversation with Greg weighed heavily on him. Was he destined to simply follow the path laid out before him? Or had he begun to carve a new one? His father's voice, ever present in the back of his mind, reminded him that stability came from responsibility. Could he reconcile this emerging vision with the life he had always been told to maintain? As he lingered on the threshold of comfort and courage, the conflict deepened. As night fell, Rick snowballed thoughts over the challenge awaiting him, approaching his father about how he'd begun to expand his horizons. The weight of that impending conversation formed a knot in his stomach. Would his father accept a different vision of success, or would he only reinforce the fear that roamed within Rick's mind? Rick finally understood. Becoming more than what he had been was an ongoing journey, shadowed by the need to uphold familial expectations. Still, he couldn't ignore the flicker of excitement igniting his heart. In this tumultuous dance of responsibilities and aspirations, one crucial question remained: was he ready to emerge, battle-ready, to confront not just his fears, but the weight of expectations that threatened to pull him into the depths of complacency? And as that haunting night veiled the day, Rick lay awake, caught between the reflection of who he was and who he could potentially become. The time had come for more than curiosity. It was time for direct confrontation. The moment to face his choices was fast approaching. Would he finally declare his intentions, or let the tides of doubt claim him again? The morning sun spilled through the window, illuminating the shadows that lingered in Rick's mind. He rose with an urgency that pulsed beneath his skin. Today was not just another repeat of the day before, it was a crucial juncture. The idea of having a discussion with his father consumed him, pushing him forward like a tide relentless in its pursuit. What if today became the day he could redefine himself in the eyes of the man who had shaped his understanding of success? As he dressed, the fabric clung to him like a reminder of the expectations stitched into his upbringing. He wrestled with the looming conversation, considering how to articulate the fire ignited within him. His father's voice echoed in his memories, dictating a life that favored stability over dreams. Yet, every second spent in an existence marked by inertia felt like betrayal not only to himself, but to the possibilities that waited impatiently just beyond his comfort zone. At the hub, the atmosphere felt different, charged with an energy born from Rick's newfound resolve. He approached his assigned route with a sharper focus, aware that each interaction was an opportunity, a chance to cultivate change, however small. As the truck came to life under his hands, its engine growled with anticipation, mirroring his own internal roar. He maneuvered through the city streets, each stop infusing him with vitality. During a delivery to a local business, he struck up a conversation with the owner, a woman named Laura, whose laughter danced above the cacophony of urban life. "You really like talking to people, don't you?" she observed with a twinkle in her eye. "I guess I've just realized how much more there is to these exchanges than just dropping off a package," Rick replied, allowing warmth to enter his tone. "It matters to connect. People underestimate the power of connection." Laura nodded thoughtfully, her surprise sliding seamlessly into admiration. "Keep that spirit alive. It might take you places." Her words landed like seeds in fertile soil, igniting seeds of future ambitions residing in the corners of his mind. Perhaps this thirst for something greater could manifest in unforeseen ways. The conversations throughout the day became an invigorating symphony of shared lives, grounding him further in his mission. He was not just delivering packages, he was delivering compassion, attention, and understanding. Yet as midnight approached, the excitement dimmed into a palpable tension. Rick sat across from his father at their kitchen table, the weight of family expectations filling the room like a heavy fog. "Dad, I've been thinking about work, about what I want," he began, the words tumbling into the silence as he searched for footing. His father's brow furrowed, the familiar frown tugging at the edges of his mouth. "Thinking? You have a stable job, Rick. You shouldn't jeopardize that." "Where's this coming from?" Rick felt his pulse quicken. "I want something different. Something meaningful. My deliveries that can be a way to connect with people, to make a difference beyond just routine." "Meaningful?" His father scoffed, indignant. "Life isn't about meaning. It's about making sure you put food on the table." The profound chasm between them widened with every word. Deep within, Rick grappled with the fear of disappointment and the desire for validation. Yet as he searched his father's steely gaze, he sensed the flicker of those doubts surfacing yet again. The ice beneath his feet grew thinner. The urge to defend himself heightened, but the words remained trapped in his throat. The tension boiled as their arguments danced dangerously close to the precipice of a confrontation neither had anticipated. The thoughts of failure clashed with his determination, building a crescendo that threatened to erupt at any moment. Rick knew this conversation was pivotal. Would he continue to let his father's narrow view eclipse his aspirations? The stakes were exhilarating and terrifying, and for Rick, the moment teetered on a knife's edge. Would he find the courage to speak his truth fully, or would the familiar shadows of fear tug him back down into the depths? With hesitation shadowing his every thought, Rick took a deep breath, ready to leap into the unknown. The essence of his redefined self beckoned, but would he finally voice his desires against the deafening roar of doubt? The silence stretched uncomfortably between Rick and his father, a tangible barrier thick with unspoken words and unmet expectations. Taking a breath, Rick felt as if he were crossing a threshold, the air around him vibrating with potential and fear. "Dad," he began, "what if there's more out there? What if I could do something important with my life?" His father's brow deepened, the muscles in his jaw tightening. "And what exactly do you think is out there, Rick?" "You're putting dreams above necessity. You need to grow up and face reality." The dismissal stung, but instead of retreating, Rick felt an ember ignite within him. What if this is my reality? Not the boring, stable life you envision, but something that makes me feel alive? The words rushed out, lifting him slightly, as if a weight had been released. His father's expression remained stoic, yet Rick sensed the churning conflict beneath the surface. "You think you're ready for some grand pursuit? What do you know about making a living?" "I know about people," Rick countered, finding an unexpected anchor in his newfound understanding of connection. "I've realized how much I enjoy talking to them, understanding them. It's fulfilling, it's what I want to do." It was a revelation that seemed to resonate beyond their verbal sparring. The passion in his voice surprised Rick himself. Waves of doubt continued to crash against his resolved demeanor, but there was also an undeniable clarity emerging from the haze. The conversation wasn't just about his job anymore. It was reflective of a deeper current flowing through him, urging him to step into a more authentic version of himself. His father met his gaze, a flicker of surprise crossing his face. It almost seemed as if he were reconsidering the scope of his own expectations. But in a snap, the moment was punctured. "Connecting doesn't pay the bills, son. What good is fulfillment if you don't have a steady paycheck?" The familiar patterns of tension betrayed Rick. Those conflicting voices, his father's pragmatism against his own ascending aspiration, battled viciously within him. He grappled with a sense of injustice, not just for his dreams but for the emotional currency he believed was being undervalued. "Dad, maybe making a living isn't just about the money. Maybe it's about crafting a life that isn't just existing, but genuinely living." Frustration bubbled to the surface as Rick's words hung between them, laden with implications. He was on a precipice, launching himself toward uncharted territories where success wasn't merely defined by financial stability. Was it possible the values he yearned to uphold could affect people as Laura suggested? His father rose, exasperated, pacing the small living room that had confined their arguments too many times. How many more times would they clash? Each argument pushed them further into opposite corners. "You think you're ready for the world?" He shot back, his voice edged. "You think your heart is enough?" The weight of that question sank deeper than Rick anticipated. The fluttering inside begged him to claim his experiences and assert himself fully. Indeed, it was about more than just his father's approval. It was a quest to assert his identity against past determinism. "Maybe my heart can build connections that are more valuable than you realize," Rick said, his voice steadier now, laced with determination. "What if I could create opportunities not just for me, but for others too?" Rick's momentum surged, fueled by that small ember growing into a flame. "I want to explore this potential. I want to meet people, understand their stories, perhaps even inspire something meaningful for all of us. If that makes me a risk-taker, then maybe that's what I need to be." Suddenly, doubt twisted, rearing its head once more. Was he truly ready for this? Would his father ever understand? Yet as Rick met his father's intense gaze, he felt the pressure of the moment collapse inward. He recognized this was not just about him anymore. It was about forging a life worth living. Rick, his father finally broke brow unfurling, as concern stitched lines across his face. "Are you really certain?" There it was, the opening Rick had been seeking, a crack in the armor of expectations, an invitation to share his fervent desires. The tug of uncharted paths loomed in his mind, a tantalizing adventure waiting to unfold. More than ever, he replied, gratitude infusing his words. "I have to give it a shot. I can't just then prove it," his father interrupted sharply. "Show me what you're capable of, but be prepared for failure." Rick swallowed hard, feeling an unfamiliar mix of anxiety and exhilaration. This was at the moment that could catapult him forward or send him spiraling back into the confines of familiar dissatisfaction. Would he take his father's challenge and step into uncertainty, or would he retreat into comfort once more? The answer wavered dangerously on the horizon, but one certainty solidified beneath the surface. He was ready to embrace what lay beyond the edge of known parameters, willing to carve out a space for himself amid the expectations that loomed large. As he squared his shoulders, Rick realized that the confrontation wasn't simply about defending his desires, it was a call to action. He had a life to create and a purpose to pursue, but the journey had just begun. Would he rise up to this challenge or falter in the face of that unknown, standing at the doorway of an exhilarating new path? The first rays of dawn broke through Rick's bedroom window, illuminating a patch of floor that felt foreign in the growing light. It was a new day, a new beginning, but instead of excitement, a gnawing anxiety clawed at his stomach. The challenge his father posed echoed in his mind. Prove it. A demand that felt more like a dare, a push off the edge into uncharted waters. With each minute that ticked by, the weight of indecision pulled heavily on his conscience. He looked around his room, cluttered with remnants of his past self, a mixture of college textbooks, old photographs, and half-finished projects that had never seen the light of day. Each item told a story of missed chances, plans abandoned in favor of comfort and routine. That was the version of himself his father still saw, the dreamer, but not the doer. Rick shot out of bed and paced. What did proving it even look like? He pulled out his phone and scrolled through his contacts until he found Laura's name. She had always encouraged him to embrace his curiosity about people, often teasing him about his knack for connecting with strangers. Compounded by the energy sizzling from his conversation with his father, he made a split-second decision. With a quick text, he invited Laura to meet him for coffee. The inviting scent of roasted beans filled his senses as he walked into the corner cafe they used to frequent. Within moments, she appeared, her smile broadening as she spotted him. A flicker of warmth washed over him, a reminder that he didn't have to navigate this transformation alone. "Rick, you actually texted," she said, teasingly raising an eyebrow. "Yeah, well, I might need your help," he replied, casting a sidelong glance at his own reflection in the cafe's window. "I want to explore something different." Sipping her coffee, Laura leaned forward as if to absorb the intensity in his voice. "Different how?" He hesitated but felt a rush of determination. "I want to connect with people on a deeper level. To understand their stories, what drives them. I want to create something meaningful from that, possibly even a project of my own." "I love it," she exclaimed, the excitement sparkling in her eyes. "What do you have in mind?" It was as if a dam had burst within him. He shared his thoughts, building a platform where stories of ordinary people could find light, where inspiration could spring from shared experiences. Rick articulated everything with a fervor that stirred new currents of confidence within him. Laura's eyes lit up as he spoke, and for the first time since his confrontation with his father, Rick felt unbridled optimism. "Yes, that could be something different," she encouraged. "You can reach out to people through social media, maybe even set up interviews. You have this warm presence that draws people, and you could utilize that." But as ideas began to flow, doubt resurfaced like an unwelcome visitor. "But what if it flops? What if I fail and look foolish?" he asked, feeling the familiar unease slink in at the edges. "Failure is just a stepping stone, Rick. It's not about the first step. It's about getting up afterward," she reassured him, her tone framed in tough love. "You've been sitting on this for too long. Remember the last time you doubted yourself? You came through stronger. Her words pierced the fog that clouded his thoughts. In that instant, Rick understood that failure wouldn't define him. It was part of the process, part of proving his father wrong, part of the necessary struggle leading to growth. Emboldened, Rick nodded slowly. You're right. I need to start reaching out. I want to craft a life that stands for something valuable, something I believe in. With an invigorating sense of purpose, he and Laura began formulating a plan. They mapped out potential people to interview, brainstormed fresh ideas, and even scribbled down potential titles for what his project could be. Laughter burst forth between them in moments of creativity, dissipating the tension, yet invigorating the air with possibility. Yet, as invigorating as the meeting felt a lingering, apprehension nagged at him. He was stepping away from the familiar territory of safety, the steady paycheck, the paralyzing routines. Was he truly ready for this plunge into unpredictability? As they wrapped up, Rick caught Laura's eye, determination brewing inside him. This is it. I'm finally taking steps. Good. She cheered, her enthusiasm infectious. Just remember, Rick, the journey is as important as the destination. Don't get discouraged. With new resolve coalescing within, he knew the next crucial move was contacting those he wanted to connect with. And so, he made a promise to himself. He would start today. As he walked home, the weight of uncertainty lifted slightly, revealing a clearer path ahead. He was initiating a journey not just for himself, but for those whose stories needed to be narrated, their lives acknowledged. Tonight, he would draft his first message. But as he approached his door, a question lingered in the back of his mind. What would happen if the deeper connections he sought made him question the very fabric of who he thought he was? With his heart racing, Rick grasped the doorknob and hesitated, the threshold of a new reality stretching before him, beckoning him to cross. Rick stood at the door, heart pounding in an accelerated rhythm that matched the tempo of his thoughts. He squeezed the doorknob, contemplating everything he had just discussed with Laura. This was bigger than he had anticipated, a step into the unknown that he felt both excited and terrified about. The world outside seemed to mock him with its mundane routine, contrasting sharply with the storm of ambition brewing within him. He stepped inside his apartment, shutting the door firmly behind him. As silence enveloped him, the weight of potential pressing down became palpable. Rick transformed that anxiety into action, setting his bag down and reaching for his laptop at the kitchen table. The familiar hum of the device reignited those flickers of hope. He began typing, capturing the raw essence of his ideas and shaping them into a coherent vision. His heart raced with each new word, but moments of doubt quickly gathered like dark clouds. What if no one was interested? What if his efforts were all for nothing? He forced himself to breathe through the swelling uncertainty, recalling Laura's words, "Failure is just a stepping stone." As his fingers flew over the keyboard, he decided that he would reach out to a diverse range of people, from artists and entrepreneurs to retirees and students. Each of their stories had the potential to spark inspiration, a narrative thread that could weave together the tapestry of a project he imagined. With every name he typed, he envisioned the conversations that could unfold, the wisdom he might glean. After an hour of drafting and editing, Rick crafted an introductory message. He kept it simple yet genuine, outlining who he was and what he hoped to achieve. As he prepared to hit send on his first email, dread seized him. Technically savvy as he was, the thought of reaching out felt as daunting as skydiving without a parachute. The rejections echoed in his mind like unpaid bills. He paused, staring at the screen filled with raw intent. What if this was the turning point he'd been unknowingly waiting for? His fingers hovered, wavering in indecision. Finally, determination surged through him as he clicked send. There was no turning back now. Rick leaned back in his chair, closing his eyes to absorb the moment. A mix of exhilaration and fear coursed through his veins, both invigorating and terrifying. He imagined stories unfolding, people sharing their highs and lows, their victories and their struggles. In seeking to amplify their voices, he also sought to amplify his own. The next few weeks turned into a whirlwind of motion. Responses began trickling in, some enthusiastic, others muted, yet every reply fed his growing resolve. He found a rhythm, formulating questions that would elicit depth, not just surface stories. Each interview was a revelation, not solely about them, but about himself as well. He learned to listen not just with his ears, but with his heart, connecting with experiences that pricked at his emotions, reshaping his understanding of vulnerability. Although he felt a growing sense of purpose, shadows of his father's skepticism lingered like a specter, haunting his progress. With every success came the gnawing fear of failure. He'd let his father down so many times. What if this endeavor failed and became just another example of his inability to carry through? His phone buzzed, pulling him from his spiraling thoughts. A message from Laura illuminated the screen. "How's it going? Let us meet." Rick remembered how she always believed in him, how she buoyed his spirit just by being present. As he prepared for their meeting, a new realization began to take form. This journey was more than about proving himself to his father. Each interaction and every story sparked growing purpose within him. Later, he met Laura at the same cafe, her smile warm and bright, laced with encouragement. They sat down, and it didn't take long for the conversation to flow, energized by shared experiences and ideas for his project. But as they spoke, Rick's internal conflict bubbled up again. Was this truly just about storytelling, or was there a deeper need he hadn't fully comprehended? He couldn't shake the feeling that every connection he made was a mirror reflecting back parts of himself he had yet to confront. And just as he was about to articulate these thoughts, a stranger at the neighboring table turned and uttered a simple phrase that would change everything. "You're not just listening to their stories, you're rewriting your own." The weight of those words settled on him like an avalanche, unraveling threads of his internal conflict. If those words held truth, Rick realized he was not merely an observer in this narrative. He was an active participant challenging his identity. With uncertainty intertwined with revelation, he looked at Laura, the weight of his decision pressing once more. The journey was transforming before his eyes into something far greater than he could have anticipated, but would he be able to maintain his integrity while confronting the unfolding truth of his very self? The sun dipped low on the horizon, painting the Georgetown streets in strokes of amber and gold, signaling both the end of a day and the dawn of new possibilities for Rick. The last few weeks of pursuing his project had transcended mere ambition. They had evolved into a revelation of character. Each encounter with the individuals he interviewed had peeled back layers of his own identity, revealing facets of courage, empathy, and resilience he had never fully acknowledged. Rick stood at a crossroads, not just of his career, but of his life. No longer was he simply a deliverman marred by self-doubt and familial expectations. He had transformed into a person bearing a mission to forge meaningful connections, to amplify unheard stories. Through this process, he had not only carved out a space for others, but had also solidified his place in a narrative entirely of his own making. The evening air buzzed with excitement as he prepared for the culmination of his project, an informal gathering of those he had interviewed, a celebration of shared stories and mutual growth. This gathering symbolized everything he had been striving for: community, connection, and authenticity. It was his chance to create a space where ordinary lives intertwined, where struggles could be shared and victories acknowledged. As guests began to arrive, Rick felt an exhilarating blend of anticipation and anxiety. Each face reflected connections he had formed, emotions he had witnessed. His heart raced as he recognized that this was a testament to his growth, not just in the eyes of others, but in his own eyes. The life of a deliverman had evolved into one of a storyteller and a connector, roles he had never envisioned for himself. Laura arrived with a vibrant smile, and they exchanged excited glances that anchored him in the reality of the moment. "You did it, Rick. This is your vision," she encouraged, her pride palpable. The contributors trickled in one by one, each bringing their own energy, their own narratives, which Rick had meticulously gathered. There was Jason, who had once been overwhelmed in the cafe, now brimming with confidence as he recounted his journey. Rick marveled at the transformation not only in others, but within himself, the way their stories interlinked with his own, creating a fabric sewn with lessons and shared humanity. As he mingled, he felt the porous boundaries of social class fade, a realization washing over him. However different their backgrounds might be, everyone carried burdens and aspirations. Rick navigated through heartfelt conversations, laughter, and occasional tears. He fostered connections much more profound than he initially imagined. Throughout the night, his insights soared, revealing that true success lay not in earning accolades but in creating space for vulnerability and authenticity. His father's definitions of success began to lose their control over him. Every quiet nudge from doubt dulled against the resounding affirmation that blossomed within. In a moment of reflection, Rick stood in a corner, observing the gathering, the energy pulsating, feeling a burgeoning sense of pride swell in his chest. He had successfully accomplished what he set out to do: create a platform for connection, shared narratives, and understanding. But more than that, he had finally begun to validate his own worth. A voice broke through his reverie, and he turned to see Lucy stepping forward, her eyes shining with admiration. "What you've done here is remarkable, Rick. You've created something more than just a project. You've tapped into the essence of who you are." Her words struck deep, illuminating the journey he had taken. He realized that through embracing vulnerability, he had conquered more than just his fears. He had transformed the way he viewed himself, allowing the responsibility of connection to reshape his identity. The night continued, with laughter and shared reflections flowing. But as guests began to share their individual stories and the profound impact Rick's project had on them, one thing stood out: a sense of respect grew around him, weaving through the fabric of the evening. Feeling a deep sense of fulfillment, Rick stepped up to address the gathering. "Thank you all for coming and for being part of this journey," he began, a confident steadiness grounding him as he spoke. "Every story shared tonight has reminded us that we are all connected, that our pain and joy are interwoven. This is only the beginning. Let us continue to share, to connect, and to uplift one another." Applause erupted around him, and he felt a newfound strength envelop him, roots of confidence anchoring deeper into his being. He had successfully navigated the past few months, evolved beyond the shadows of his upbringing, and established a new narrative for himself, a bridge between dreams and reality, a road toward meaningful aspirations. That night, as he lay in bed reflecting on the overwhelming support and recognition he had received, he realized he had fully embraced his journey. It wasn't about proving anything to his father anymore. It was about claiming his identity, being unafraid of his trajectory, and surpassing expectations he had internalized for so long. At last, Rick felt solid in his new role, confident in his future endeavors. He had not only crafted a compelling space for storytelling, he had written his own story of tenacity and courage, embodying the essence of growth and authentic fulfillment. The past would remain part of him, but it no longer would dictate his destiny. With a heart full of determination, Rick closed his eyes and drifted into a promising sleep, knowing that this was just the beginning of his profound journey. Now is the time for you to act. Subscribe immediately to our channel so you don't miss out on more exclusive emotional stories like this. Leave a like now to support the algorithm and keep these inspiring tales alive. Comment your reactions and theories about Rick's journey and share this video instantly with at least 5 friends who need to witness this transformative conclusion. You need to support these stories of overcoming adversity. Don't wait even one more second to join this community.